Hello, race fans. Welcome. We're here to talk strategy and Q&A for the Singapore GP. For many race fans, Singapore is one of the most exciting and anticipated races on the calendar. Similar to Baku in many ways, the street circuit has a history of being drama-filled and high excitement for fans. So we have a lot of exciting stuff to talk about, especially after a also dramatic race last weekend at Baku. Lots of really interesting changes and shifts on the driver leaderboard. So lots to dig into. But before we get going, some quick introductions. My name is Ross. I'm the founder and CEO of GridRival. Today with me, we got Ryan Booth, our director of business operations, and William Laddie, our principal software engineer. Michael is out today, and will hopefully be returning before the next race, which unfortunately for all of us is a month away. But hey, we just had a month break. We can do another one. Reminder to subscribe and join the channel. Find us on Discord as well if you want to engage with the community. And if you haven't realized it, we also launched kind of our own little Discord inside of the app called the Paddock. So another great place to share your lineups, discuss strategy, talk anything and everything related to motorsports right within GridRival. So you don't have to leave. And last but not least, if you are a US-based user in one of the 25 states where our cash games are live, our $1,000 Singapore GP tournament launched this morning and is already 25% filled. So if you want to get in on that, it's only $10, $5 to enter, and has a $1,000 prize pool. All right, into the weeds. We're going to do a quick recap of Baku like we always do. 9 drivers up in value at Baku, 10 down with only Daniel Ricciardo staying flat. And I think interestingly enough, this weekend, the last, 5, 6 races seems like there's been a lot of movement, but it's all been, a little bit small. There's usually 1 or 2 drivers every week that max out in the positive way or negative way at the full 2 million. This week, very, very dramatic shifts. We had Russell, Albon, Alonso, Colapinto, and Joe all up the full $2 million, the maximum amount a driver could rise on GridRival. Magnussen up 1.5 million. Leclerc up 1.1 million. Nico Hulkenberg up 500K. On the team side, some of the bigger movers, you had Williams, again, thanks to Colapinto, up almost the full amount that a constructor can go up 2.6. So some really significant gains, some crazy stuff on the global leaderboard. People had, we saw increases in team value of $8, $9, $10 million in a single event. So it was definitely either a really great event for a lot of people or for some really painful event, because we saw the opposite on the downside. Sainz, Perez, Tsunoda, and Stroll all dropped $2 million. Stroller Coaster delivered as he usually does, and last week was a down week. Said a couple in a row. Hamilton down 1.8, Verstappen down 1.6, and now 4th on the GridRival leaderboard. I can't remember the last time Max Verstappen was that low. It is, in this app, it's been years, maybe 3 or 4. I don't even remember. It's been a long time. Esteban Ocon 1.8, 1.3 down, and then Gasly down 700K. On the team side, not as huge of movement. Alpine down 2.1, Red Bull down 1.3. The rest were kind of, smaller movements, down 100K here and there. So lots of movement across the board. Any talking points from either of you before we kind of get into strategy for this race coming up? And kind of talk about underpriced and overpriced. Any call outs from Baku?
Anyone who had, speaking of big team value swings, if you had Perez and Sainz, you probably thought that things were looking extremely good for 98% of the race until the very end there. I had Perez. I guess thankfully I didn't have Sainz. I think realistically, if you're smart, this was probably the best race to roster Perez, and it ended up being a horrible decision.
Yeah, so I was torn between Perez and Hamilton, and I was regretting my choice of Hamilton when he started from pit lane, because I want to know what the order of operations was there. Did they decide we need a power unit, let's take it out of Park for May and change other stuff? Or did they say, we need to change the suspension thingy and go out of Park for May? And that was, I don't know what happened there. So I was regretting that right up until like 2 to go, when Perez and Sainz managed to run into each other.
Yeah.
I think one big takeaway is actually Williams is not second worst anymore.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know how much of this is like Colapinto allegedly being better than Sargent versus Williams has brought some upgrades and they've gotten faster.
Well,
Because
maybe
like they're
I don't know if I
consistently
can say this safely around Ryan, but I mean, it was a low bar to beat, I think.
like they're consistently beating Alpine,
Yeah.
and yeah, like they were beating Sauber, they're beating Alpine now, and like they may have even surpassed Haas, like as far as the car's pace.
Yeah.
And yeah, Albon got out qualified, but that's also because he didn't get a final run in Q3. Like I think
Yeah.
he would have beaten Colapinto otherwise, if he keeps the car in one piece. So yeah, I think Williams has improved drastically. I see a few Williams questions in the chat already, and they are a worthy choice of constructor, I think, if you're going to go that route. If they really are this fast, then they do have room to grow. The flip side is Singapore rookie driver Colapinto did crash on Friday,
Mm-hmm.
and no guarantee nothing will happen, this week.
Yeah, we'll talk about it here in a minute. But as I was filling out some of my lineups this week, I was having a difficult time trying to balance, some of the underpriced drivers that I think exist on the board right now are also ones where it's kind of like, there might be high risk for a street course like Singapore, because I think Singapore and Baku very similarly, usually high drama courses, or have the tendencies to be. I remember several of these races where there's 2-3 safety cars that have come out during the race. So I think this version of Baku was extremely tame. If you take out the last lap with the scuttle between Sainz and Perez, it was otherwise a pretty tame race.
It's either boring or there's like 2 red flags.
Yeah, for sure. So super interesting. Ryan, any feedback from you on Colapinto so far being far superior to Logan Sargent in the Williams?
I mean, I guess you could say some of his results so far have been better.
Yeah.
I think there's more to racing than where you finish. I don't know. We're still, the Logan Sargent fan club was taken by surprise with the Baku results. I mean, we expected a strong showing at Monza because like Logan was probably putting that car on the podium, so Colapinto on the points was not surprising.
Right.
But Baku, I was very surprised, and I have to say impressed with how he looked in Baku. That was a very good race. He ran well.
I agree.
And
that's a tough race as a rookie to do that well into.
Yeah, so we're working on. We'll use the break to come up with the PR spin zone for when we come back for Austin. We need a little more time. We don't quite have it just yet.
Sargent was seen in Nashville over the weekend where IndyCar was running. We may have an IndyCar spin-off next year. That's what we have to do as the Logan Sargent fan club. Like whatever series he's in, like if he ends up in IMSA, we're gonna have to put IMSA in place and fully commit to IMSA. Who knows?
I'll just start traveling every weekend, go to all the races, whatever series he ends up in. F1, it was too expensive to go around the globe for F1, but if he's in Indy, I can make it to most of those.
Yeah,
it's
man,
a
you
lot
can get an
more
RV.
accessible.
You can get a motorhome and drive around. Okay, into strategy for Singapore. So we're going to start as we normally do with underpriced. We have a pretty senior viewership on this show as far as players of GridRivals. I think most people know a very core part of this game and being successful is finding drivers who are underpriced and making money as they get released off of your team, hoping they go up in value. We are certainly at a point in the season where if your team is worth over, I would call it 130 million, obviously not, it's circumstantial, but that's a pretty safe number. You probably should be thinking a lot more about points than value. But if you're still under that threshold, I think, gaining value to be able to build a better team for the remainder of the season, I think is still really critical. So lots of stuff to discuss in terms of undervalued. I think we should get the most obvious one off the table. Colapinto, very undervalued. When he swapped out with Logan Sargent, we started him at the bottom of the leaderboard. Already went up 2 million the last race. And let's see, what was his previous? He's went up. He started at 4, went to 6. Now he's at 8. I don't know that this is going to stop for another 3 or 4 races if he continues to finish close to Albon. His upside is another. Albon right now is at 15. Colapinto's at 8. So I think he has at least probably, if assuming he doesn't DNF, and if he has decent races, I think he has another 3 or 4 races where he has the potential to go up the full 2 million. The closer he gets to the 15, the harder it's going to be for him to increase by that full amount. But it seems to be that if you have a long-term Colapinto contract, and I do not, I only signed him for 1 race, which is rare, but I made a quick $2 million on it. I think if you're a person that has him for a long-term contract, I think you're in for a pretty good ride. I'm not sure if you guys have any differing opinions.
I overthought this a little bit. I knew he was undervalued, but with having so much team value, I didn't really need to squeeze somebody in as a budget. But my plan was, I don't really want him in Baku. I don't want him in Singapore. And then I was just going to sign him for Austin and on. So I think those tracks are better for Williams. I think it's, I didn't want Colapinto at these, tight street courses. He made me look like an idiot on Sunday. So now I'm trying to figure out if I want him now, if I do just wait till Austin. It's going to come down to what I end up doing with my team here. We'll get to talent driver later, but like Alonso is no longer talent eligible. So I'll probably cut that contract and try and find a new talent driver and fit the rest in around that. But yeah, Colapinto, you have to take a serious look at him now after how he looked and how that car is looking.
Yeah,
for sure.
Singapore, it makes me nervous. I don't know if I want him for Singapore yet. I have to see what the rest of my options look like. Beyond that, I would, if I'm going to take Colapinto, if I trust him for Singapore, then I probably am taking him for probably 4 races and then have him off for a non-sprint weekend. From this point on, every other weekend's a sprint weekend. No sprint at Singapore, sprint at Austin, and then no, yes, no, yes, no. So that'll be a small consideration as I'm lining up whether I emphasize drivers, constructors, what have you. If I trust Colapinto, though, in Singapore, then I probably would trust him in Vegas as well. But I might also just skip Colapinto, take him for 3, and then have him off for Vegas, and then take him, depending on how things are looking. Vegas is a street course.
Do you feel more worried about Colapinto at Singapore this weekend than you did with Baku, or were you equally?
Yes, I like Singapore. Singapore is somewhat tighter than.
Okay.
I believe it's somewhat tighter than Baku. It's produced a little bit more chaos over the years than Baku, I think. So I'd be a little bit more worried. It is also a night race, which is something that I believe is going to be new to Colapinto. So you never know if that might rattle him a little bit. So
certainly some variations.
I thought there.
Yeah, I would say in a vacuum, I think you trust him less at Singapore, but with that data point that we have in that last race, I think I just have more trust in him overall. So I'm still trying to figure out if I'm going to run him in Singapore, but my doubts have been quelled a little bit.
If I take him, I take him for 4 races and I have him off for Vegas, I think.
Yeah, I like that strategy. Okay, moving on. Next one to talk about, Sainz. Sainz is now, he dropped 2 million as a result of his DNF. He's at 23.3 million. He has a very large gap. Of the gap, if you take the top 4 constructors on the app, Red Bull now has the largest gap in between them. So Leclerc is ranked number 1 in salary. Sainz is ranked 7th. The 2 Merc guys are 5 and 6. McLaren's 2 and 3. Red Bull also a gap, which we'll talk about in a second, but not nearly as large. So is Sainz, to me, seems like a good blue chip pick in like the kind of top 8 drivers of somebody who you could probably add to your team for a lengthy amount of time and not only get decent points. Not saying he's going to be up there with, the McLarens, but I think he could be a good long-term pick. And at 23.3 million, I think on a 4 or 5 race contract, you're probably going to gain value on him as well as get, pretty decent points.
I think Sainz is. I'll put it another way. I think Leclerc is markedly better than Sainz. That
Yep.
said, in a street course scenario, I really like Ferrari, so I want Sainz this weekend. I'm going to try and make that happen this weekend, and I probably want to line things up so that I'd have both of those drivers available for Vegas, which is another street course. I think we're gonna have to wait until Austin to see if Ferrari's really there on the non-street courses and like the non like special, like Monza's a special snowflake as far as tracks go. Uh, like on a more normal track, we have to wait until Austin to see if Ferrari's really there. But I like Sainz this weekend. I'm gonna see if I can make that work this weekend. That said, I think Max is legitimately better than him. I think both Mercedes are probably better than him. There's also the angle that Sainz is a bit of a lame duck. He is going to Williams next year and going to be getting replaced by Hamilton. So who knows like how much he's in the meetings and how much he's in the loop. I think if they keep him in the loop, it's because they still have a chance at second in the constructors. Like they caught some grounds up on Red Bull. So I think Sainz will remain competitive for a while. And and obviously the McLarens are faster than him. If Norris doesn't screw up qualifying, they won you that race easily on Sunday.
Yeah. Yep. I was actually going to say, Sainz is a must roster for me this week. And I think even without taking price into consideration, I like him better than both the Mercedes and I like him better than Verstappen. I think he finishes ahead of all of those cars and he's cheaper than them. So I'm getting him on my roster, pretty much no matter what. I think he's the best value of the top drivers. I don't think he's going to beat Leclerc. I don't think he's going to beat Piastri or Norris, but I think he's better than the Mercedes and better than Max right now. And I think he's going to be better this weekend. I mean, we'll see what happens in practice, but as of right now, if I had to pick one, it's Sainz.
At Singapore, I would absolutely agree that he'll beat Max. Singapore was a disaster for Red Bull last year on pace. Like it wasn't even like a crash or anything. They just stunk. And there's no indication that they're not going to stink this weekend at Singapore. So like, for this weekend, I agree with you that he's better than Max.
Yeah. If they stunk last year with the discrepancy from their car to everybody else's car, what's it going to look like this year?
They were easily best last year, and they stunk at Singapore.
Mm-hmm. Ryan, what's your contract length you're bringing Sainz on for?
That's TBD. I don't know. I think at this point, I've been saying the last couple of shows that I'm just signing max contracts, and then I'll just cut them whenever I think it's time to cut them and just eat the fee.
Interesting.
So I'm fine at this point eating fees because I have a pretty high team value, and I don't want to miss out because I have a driver who looks amazing in practice on lockdown. And disclaimer, this is only a good strategy if you have if your team value is over 130, 135-ish, you can do this with 7 races left. I'm only expecting to really cut maybe 1 or 2 each week, if that. But yeah, I might just sign him for 5 and see where things go. Because that would take me through 1, 2, 3. That gets me through Vegas.
Yeah, you'd have him offer Cutter.
Yeah, because I definitely want him in Vegas. I just wanted to make sure I didn't have his contract ending 1 race before Vegas. So it's either do not sign him for 4. I think you're either taking the short term or 5. Like signing him for 4, I think is the worst thing you can probably do because then you're not going to have him for Vegas.
I think the sweet spot is 2 if you take him. So if you take him for 2, you have him off for Mexico, which is not a sprint and it's not a street circuit. And it gives you a chance to assess whether Ferrari's really there or not on a more proper track in the form of Austin, which has a sprint as well. And if I have him off for Mexico, then I can have him on the rest of the way. I have him on for both the sprints. I have him on for the street circuit. And we have him on as Ferrari is potentially fighting for better placement in the Constructors' Championship. So I think 2 is the sweet spot if I go for him.
I like it. Moving on, similar position. We have Sergio Perez now in eighth, at 20.2 million, which is only 200K away from the lowest he's been all season long. Sergio has been a little bit of a volatile pick, I think, the last 5, 7, 8 races, which is reflected in his salary chart. If you're looking at his driver profile, been kind of up and down. Given that he's close to the bottom, are you guys recommending Perez this week for anybody, or do you think you'd be holding off to see what happens?
I don't trust Red Bull at Singapore. That's my biggest problem. And the second biggest problem is, what did Perez do last week? He crashed, and we trust him not to crash again. I'm not touching Red Bull at all this weekend. I think Red Bull is a do not buy this weekend. So anything Red Bull.
I agree. And I will say too, this probably doesn't happen, but it's worth keeping an eye on. Being at 20.2, that means he can't get into talent driver range with one bad race, but he's potentially 2 races away. So I think, like William said, I don't really like him this weekend, which also means I don't know if I want, if his salary drops, and it looks like it's very realistic that with a bad race in Austin, he becomes talent driver eligible. He's a must-have at that point. But right now, I'm just kind of staying away, and I'm just going to see if he's going to hit 18.
And the week after Austin, he's on home soil as well with Mexico.
Yeah, I think ideally, I guess it's probably not a ton of value because everyone's going to do it. But yeah, if it lines up that Perez is talent driver eligible going to Mexico, I think you'll see like a 100% league adoption and talent driver indicator on that guy.
For sure. I would be betting on it not happening, but it would be very interesting if it did. We'll see. Okay, a couple more maybe quick ones, and then so we can get to Q&A. The stroller coaster, if you can see that. See, he's on that part of the roller coaster where you know at the beginning where it's the high and then you dip all the way down. He was at his peak just 5 races ago in Hungary, a little over 16 million. He's dropped all the way to the lowest he's been all season long. Now at 11 million flat. It's always a risk to play on the stroller coaster, but given he's had 5 races of decline, if we're talking just purely about like odds of this happening again, it's getting into pretty low territory. And I'm not winning. I'm winning in one of the leagues I'm in, but the other 2, I'm kind of getting to the point where it's like, I got to go big or go home. I'm personally thinking about Lance for like a race or 2, hoping that, he makes a comeback, because at 15th, if he has a good race, good races for him are usually midfield, meaning he has the potential to go up the full $2 million, at least in one of the races. If he has 2 that are good, even more. But so always a risky play with him, but I'm not sure if you guys have any thoughts just on rostering Lance at this point, given he's had such a big drop.
I don't know if the show or the chat is ready for my Lance Stroll thoughts right now, but unless if I'm trying to make up points in the standings, which I am, and I had to choose today who my talent driver is going to be in Singapore, it's Lance Stroll.
Yeah.
I would take Lance Stroll as my talent driver.
Got to make the contrarian play sometimes. We're all picking from the same roster.
Obviously, things can change based on practice, but I think that, I don't know, maybe it's Albon, but I think of the eligible talent drivers, Lance Stroll have the highest finishing position this weekend.
So I took Stroll talent driver last weekend.
Oof.
And he ended up with a hole in his side pod.
Yeah, so that's the challenge of the stroller coaster, is like you go through that and then you're bitter, and then so you take him off your team, and it's
Singapore. There's way too much stuff for him to run into at Singapore.
There is. I mean, to be fair, the last race, I mean, it wasn't really his fault in Baku, right? He had
hey, you never know. Like maybe Fernando Alonso needs a safety car at the right time, and the call comes down from his father. Hey, Lance, Can you bid it
Pile
for
into
me?
the car. Have another
Another
what was
crash gate.
Yeah,
Make it look
Crashgate.
realistic, and just like
Yeah,
he's got a lot of
sell
practice.
it better than PK did.
Crashgate 2.0.
Yeah.
Okay, some last thoughts real quick. Ocon down 1.3 all the way down to 9.1. Meanwhile, Gasly is 11.6. Again, I don't think a ton of upside there, but anytime somebody drops, a significant amount, you kind of just wonder how they stand. Sonoda's in the same spot, down 2 million all the way to down 2.0 million all the way down to 7.7, almost half of the value of Ricardo, who's ranked 12th. So there's some small wins there, I think, and then you have Williams as a constructor. What are you guys thinking there? They already gained 2.6, so they've already went up. But assuming Colapinto continues to deliver, as does Albon, and we know the amount a constructor can increase is a million more each race, so there could be some pretty decent upside there for Williams as a constructor.
Yeah, they might be better than Haas, and I'll tie it back to what you had observed about the Alpine drivers being down. I think Williams has surpassed Alpine. I think Alpine is spiraling, and they're better than Sauber, and that's it. And I would also argue that Williams is better than the Racing Bulls. And Williams is at least equal with Haas at this point, at least equal. So, yeah, I think Williams does potentially have some room to run up. And I'm not touching those Alpine guys that you mentioned. Like, if they gain, it's because other people had problems and they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a possibility in Singapore. Like, if you pick the midfielders, like even the back markers, and they don't crash. Like, I actually had Joe last weekend because that's all that would fit. And I gained 2 million because he didn't crash and a lot of other people crashed.
Right.
Last car running can actually have some value, especially at a street course.
For sure.
And yeah, never touched the Alpines. There's no team I care about less than the Alpines. I don't think I've rostered it. I think I've rostered Ocon like once this whole season, and I don't know if I've ever used Gasly. I don't know why I hate them so much, but I'm out.
All right,
remaining out.
Firm no there from Ryan. All right, let's get to some Q&A. All the way back to the top. Let's see. Archer, minus 5.1 on Yuki contract in the last 3 races. Now he's going to rise. That's not a question. That's a comment. Tony Smith. Hi, guys. Love these streams. Question is Williams worth a punt as a constructor to free up cash for a premium driver, or should I stick with McLaren for Singapore?
How many races do you have left? Is the first question I is. If I have 1 race left on my McLaren contract, I'm not touching that.
Yeah, I agree.
Keep the high price constructor now before we head into all these sprints.
Yeah,
that's when you're going to want to prioritize drivers.
Exactly. If I'm going to downgrade constructor, I'm going to wait until Austin, and then I can line myself up for maximum sprint points.
Yeah, especially with McLaren.
Yeah, the question is like, if you downgrade from McLaren to Williams, who are you signing as a driver? Like, what are you doing with that money?
Mm-hmm.
Like, where like McLaren can easily 1-2. Like, they are the fastest car on the grid right now.
Ismail, I have 37 million, 1 driver spot open and a team open. What would you recommend? We need to know if you guys want us to answer these. Who else is on your roster and who's locked? Who can't you sign?
Yeah.
That'll help us quite a bit more because then we're just picking 2 random drivers in this circumstance. Dave Murphy, thoughts on?
Yeah. Like in a vacuum, I'm taking. We have 37 million. I'm probably taking Norris while he's at a slight discount, and then maybe Colapinto.
Yeah, I was going to say Colapinto, and then
if you somehow don't have Norris, take Norris. I actually cut Norris last week, like because I did from the practice times, I didn't think he was going to win the race. He ended up not winning the race. So like I ate a fee if you're value anyway.
If you're going for value, you could go Colapinto Sainz, and you'd leave you some money in the bank. But
he's one driver, 1 team. So I was going to say Sainz and Williams.
Oh,
that's
1 driver, 1
that's
team.
36.
Okay. And Sainz and Williams sounds great.
But yeah, going back really quick to Lando, I was actually locked out of Lando last week, and I was like, oh, this is great. He's starting 17th, and he's going to drop way down on a sign up for 5 races. I mean, he only lost 0.7. He ran a very good race, all things considered.
Yeah, he did get bailed out a little bit by that crash at the end of the race. Like that gave him 2 free spots.
He did, but I mean, it's crazy. Like he passed Max. Because all the way through and passes Max. There's such a difference in these cars right now, and Lando is going to be on the team. I'm signing him for 5. I just want him as much as I can the rest of the year.
Give me 4 for Lando, so I don't miss out on a sprint.
I like that move.
Listen to William. William's smarter than me. That's a much better. That's a much better idea.
Say otherwise. The standings say you're smarter than me. Or if practice doesn't look good, then I wait one more week. And then I sign Lando for 5, and then I have him off for Abu Dhabi, and which is the last race of the year.
And to be fair, all these suggestions come with the disclaimer of look at practice.
Yes, there's been a lot of pontification on Tuesday that's just gone completely out the window on Friday.
Okay, Dave Murphy says thoughts on Gasly talent driver for Singapore. Not a fan. Yeah, it just seems risky. A lot of the drivers that are in the high talent driver range make me nervous at Singapore. Hulkenberg seems to be pretty consistent. Albon probably, but like Ricardo, Magnussen, Gasly, Stroll, Ocon, all of that's a bunch of drivers that I think I'm nervous to sign as a talent driver.
Yeah. Of everyone in the 10 plus range, I think Gasly might be the worst option actually, unless we see something on Friday that says Alpine is not the second slowest car on the grid. Because right now I think Alpine is the second slowest car on the grid.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think too, all these drivers, especially at a course like Singapore, I think everyone has a pretty low floor. But you're really looking at who has a higher ceiling. And I think you can kind of construct a way that the race plays out and see Stroll could finish in the points, or either of the Williams can finish in the points. Hulkenberg has that. I don't see a world unless something really wacky happens where Gasly or Ocon are points finishers.
Yeah.
I think it's the world where Stroll takes out half the field on the first turn.
For sure.
Sign me up for that.
Or Checo does it. Maybe more likely Checo than Stroll.
All right, next question. Are Sainz, Perez, and Hamilton good candidates for price bounce back after their price drops? I think we kind of already answered those. Sainz, yes, we think so. Perez, maybe. Hamilton, I don't think. I think Hamilton's priced fairly. I mean, I don't know.
I see him beating Red Bull.
Yeah, I was going to say that was the one caveat. Is I think he could overtake Max. Max is at 26 and 4th. I think you could see Hamilton, go up another.
Singapore in particular, I think Red Bull is the 4th fastest car.
Yeah.
At best, 4th fastest.
I think George's post-race comments were interesting in his podium interview. He was like, I don't think we really didn't have the car, and we really never should have finished P3. And he's like, instead of being happy, he was kind of like, we've got some issues to figure out, which didn't sound super optimistic. I have no problem with Hamilton's price right now. I think he was probably a little inflated going into the race, and he just kind of got knocked down to where he should be. And then, like I said earlier, Sainz definitely want, and Perez I'm kind of just out on.
Okay, Jake Vossen, I have Piastri, Lewis, Hulkenberg, and Mercedes. All 3 driver contracts end next week. Thinking of adding Norris and Colapinto, dropping Merck and adding McLaren. Leclerc, Russell, and Alonso all locked. Thoughts? 43.849 available. That is a model for how to ask us a lineup question, by the way. Thank you, Jake.
I might swap Hamilton for Sainz. If that'll fit. I don't know off the top of my head what the release fee would be on Hamilton, and how much that would leave you with. But Norris and Colapinto both seem like good choices.
I agree.
And McLaren would be a considerable upgrade over Mercedes. And McLaren, the fastest car on the grid. Mercedes.
I would wonder too how many races are left on that Mercedes contract. Kind of to your point earlier, if it's 1, I might just hold off and wait. But because that's going to be expensive contract to drop, you're going to pay close to 750,000 to drop that one. But in the grand scheme of things, I'm guessing he's probably in a position Ryan is where he has pretty high team value and can afford to cut. And if that's the circumstance, then
I
you know,
want to.
again,
I actually like. I might even drop Mercedes and go for a cheaper constructor and take a better driver than Colapinto is going to give you upside in terms of value growth, but
yeah,
not as much upside in terms of points.
yep,
And as we run out of races in the year, we want to emphasize points a little bit more. And then again, line yourself up to have those premium drivers on sprint weekends. So maybe you even just hold Mercedes this week and make your move for Austin when you get to like 3 races out of 5 or sprints.
yeah, I agree. I
Yeah,
think that's
and
great advice.
for sprint weekends, I'm going to fill my drivers and then just fit in whatever constructor I can. I'm not
Yeah,
not
if
just
I have to
totally
run Sauber,
disregarding
I
it,
run
but
Sauber.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm normally in that same boat. I think this week I'm trying to get Williams in there for a couple races because I do think they have some upside. Okay, Grayson Holter, I've got 33.4 available with Yuki and Mercedes locked. Not missing out much, I don't think there. Need one driver, one constructor, but I've got Alonso on my roster, so thinking of dropping him since he's no longer a talent driver. Leclerc, Hulkenberg, and Hamilton are on. So he has 4
exactly
drivers.
where I
Leclerc,
am.
Hulkenberg, yeah, okay, Alonso.
Yeah, I think Alonso. Most of Alonso's fine. I think most of the value of rostering him was being able to click on the star. And now that
Yeah,
you
for
can't
sure.
do that, like
So if he
what's
drops
the point?
If he drops Alonso, he gets, call it 18 million back, which puts him at close to just under 50, right? And
Yeah,
would
just
need
a
to
little
then,
over 18. His release fee will be 561,000. I can
yeah.
see that right now because I'm planning on doing that.
So then he would need, at that point, he would need 2 drivers and a constructor for 50 million. He's got Leclerc, Hulk, and Hamilton. So I'm thinking constructor. I'd be going. I think Williams is the best value on the leaderboard. If you're just trying to fill if you're trying to fill in a spot like you guys were saying, I mean at 13.5, I think they're hard to beat, which leaves you with what left 37
For two drivers.
for 2 drivers. So I'm going again. A lot of this depends on what your team value is. To Williams' point earlier, I think if you're still trying to get value, I'm probably going for 37 Colapinto and. Again, if it's a value play, Sainz. But if value is not as important maybe like he doesn't have any McLaren coverage, does he?
Yeah, because what Norris plus Colapinto is 36.
Yeah,
36.4. That's probably the move.
Yeah,
I agree. Yeah, I like that move. If you're less concerned about team value, Norris and Colapinto, plus Williams. If you're more concerned about team value, maybe Colapinto, Sainz, and Williams, because then you have a little bit more upside with Sainz. But I think those
you
are
give me like one race of Sainz, and hopefully he goes up, and like then we get to Austin, and then we can look at somebody like a Norris or a Piastri.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I definitely want Norris more than Piastri. He's cheaper. I think he's a better driver. And also, we didn't really get to see this play out, but like going into Baku, they kind of said, new papaya rules, like we're going to prioritize Lando. And obviously we didn't get to see it play out with the qualifying, but I would assume that they're going to keep the same thing going moving forward, at least for the next few races, while Lando's still alive in this chase.
Yeah, until Norris is eliminated from the Drivers' Championship, I think they're going to prioritize Norris.
Yeah. So if you don't have either, it's Lando for like 100% Lando and never Piastri.
Yeah.
If you're choosing between the two.
He's the number 1 driver there for the moment, and he's undervalued right now for a car that could win. If you want me to make a case against having them for Singapore, street circuits have slightly more variance than other tracks in terms of things that can go wrong. So there's that. I think it's only a small consideration for drivers of those caliber. But if you want me to make that case, there's your case.
All right, Christine, 76.38 million to spend. I have Russell and Alonso. I need 3 drivers and 1 constructor. Locked out of Norris, Gasly, and Haas.
33.
Russell and Alonso, 76. Okay, so Ryan, you got the calculator at? So take out.
No, I was gonna say I got to start having a
Um,
notepad doing this stuff.
Yeah, so 76.38. What's Williams? I mean, I think my advice is going to be very similar to the last question. So
Williams is 13.5, so that leaves
puts
you with
62.83.
Yep.
And you go, how many drivers she need? 3. Okay, so let's do Colapinto. It's -8.
Yep.
That's what, 54?
54.
What is so Norris is locked. So
54?
we have 54 for 2 drivers.
Give me Piastri and give me Sainz.
Yeah, I like that
Or
combo.
at 54, like you could also take like Leclerc and
Leclerc and Sainz.
you can take Leclerc and Sainz and take one of those guys for one race so that you can pick Norris up for Austin.
Yep.
Like I probably put the one racer on Sainz and then I go for Norris for Austin, and I just take Norris for 5. And with 6 races left, you're going to have him out for one race. It's just a matter of which one.
For sure.
Once you get to that window, I would say not the sprint races. Like have them off for Mexico, Vegas, or Abu Dhabi.
Okay, Lisa B, 48.3 with Hulkenberg, Albon, and Stroll, and Ferrari. Norris and Alonso are on cooldown. I need 2 drivers, but would be happy to jump off the stroller coaster early. I wonder how many stroller coaster contracts are left.
Don't jump off now. This is when you want to be on it.
I agree. He's at the bottom. That's not to say the bottom can't go deeper, but he's at the lowest he's been the entire season. So I think if you have him, you might want to hold on to him and pray that the stroller coaster starts to go back to a peak. So we have 48.32 drivers. I think a lot of options at that price point. Hulk, Albon, Stroll.
And with the Stroll thing, I make a lot of joke comments on the show, but I legitimately do believe in Stroll this weekend. So when I say I think he's going to be the best finished of every talent driver, I actually do mean that.
48.3. I'm definitely picking up. She didn't say Lando's on cool. Oh yeah, Norris is on cooldown. So yeah, I mean, I would.
Sainz is an option. Or
Sainz
you could do something like
Sainz and Piastri.
Can't afford that one, I don't think.
Or you could do something like Leclerc and Albon with that kind of money.
Yeah, that would actually be really solid. Well, she'd have some optionality for talent driver too.
Yeah.
She didn't want to go Stroll. She'd have Albon she could choose from, who's ranked pretty high.
And the good news with Albon too is like I definitely want Albon in Austin, and he, no matter what, will be in talent driver range for Austin, even with another 2 million. Like if he does awesome this weekend, like he'll still be at 17.5. So,
okay. Next question: should I consider dropping? It's from Yatin. Should I consider dropping Mercedes, paying an early release fee, and sign Ferrari instead? Which drivers would you prioritize for Austin onwards? Okay, so 2 questions. Should I consider dropping Merc and pay an early release fee to sign Ferrari? I don't think so.
Like how many races are we talking about on Mercedes?
Yeah, I mean, let's say it's, I don't know. Let's say it's 5. Like
if we
let's
think
do
Ferrari
a scale.
If we think Ferrari is legitimately better than Mercedes, then we can justify that choice.
If you can afford to,
like it seems like it's gonna be 750,000, and the difference, like just looking at 8 race average, right? They have a difference of 5 points. It just doesn't seem like a worth it maneuver. Maybe I'm missing something.
Yeah. Well, the question is like, do we think Ferrari has surpassed Mercedes like over the break?
Probably, but in the game, like how much real upside is there going to be? I'm just thinking of like all the things this person could do. This
there
to
might
me
be a
doesn't
better
seem
way
like
to
the most.
spend that money.
That's what I'm saying. It doesn't seem like a high payoff. Like I would have not thought about that strategically if I was in the same situation. So
if he's able to fill out the rest of his lineup and be totally fine and has like a little bit left over that's enough to pay the release fee, I mean, I think you're going to get more points out of Ferrari than you are Mercedes this weekend.
Yes.
You know, it wouldn't be my first move, but if, you know, with team construction, however that goes, like I would do it for points. Like if you really need those points and you're okay eating a little bit of team value, then it's worth a shot, but only if it really works. Like I wouldn't be doing that if I didn't have a plan in place for the rest of the roster.
All right, I'm gonna skip our second question because we only have 15 minutes left. We got a lot more still in.
I think we're going to naturally answer that a lot too.
Yeah, probably. Okay. Alex Kimball, I've been on a downward spiral for the past 4 to 5 races. Hey man, we have all been there. Not this season for me, but I've had some downward spirals in the past. I got absolutely wrecked at Baku. I had Sonoda, Sainz, and Stroll in my team. Okay, this is actually not a question, so we feel for you. Better team between RBS and Alpine.
The
Racing
one that's
Bulls.
not Alpine.
Yeah, I think we kind of already answered that
Yeah,
one.
Sauber's worst, Alpine's second worst. Everyone else is better.
Okay. Here's an actual question from Alex. Okay. After lockdown lift, I'm left with Piastri, Sonoda, and Aston for one more race. I have 3 open driver spots and just under 50 million. Any advice to get me out of this hole? Piastri, Sonoda, Aston. So, Piastri's great. Sonoda, I feel like Sonoda is actually, I mean, at 7.7, probably like a decent.
He's only
hold.
above the Saubers at this point, so it's hard
Yeah.
to do any worse.
He's at rock bottom. I mean, look, this is his salary chart
Yeah.
for the year. So I almost feel like I would hold
If
on
he keeps
to
the
him.
car in one piece, it's not going to get any worse than this.
Right.
If he keeps the car in one piece.
Aston Martin, I also feel like for this upcoming event, if you're trusting what Ryan says about Stroll, and you know Alonso's a blue chip driver, like I think very likely to do well. So 3 open driver spots and under 50 million.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the bargains we've talked about. Like Sainz is a bargain, and Ferrari's probably going to perform well. Colapinto is a bargain and has a fairly high ceiling. It has a very high ceiling for his price point.
Yeah.
So that's 2 of your drivers, and that would leave you with
Well, it's what is that? 31.8.
31.8. So that leaves you with your pick of talent drivers.
Yeah.
31.3.
So you
sorry.
could like take Albon or Hulkenberg, whatever talent driver you think is going to be best.
Yeah, I think that's actually a great spot. I mean, that lineup sounds really good to me. Or definitely has a high upside. Okay, should I consider signing Lando and or Piastri for 5 races straight?
You should. I would rather sign them for 4 races. That way, I don't miss a sprint race. If I take them for 5 races now, I don't have them for Cutter, which is a sprint. And so reminds everybody, drivers score points for sprints in our game. Constructors do not. So drivers are going to have a bit more value in the sprint weekends, which are Austin, Brazil, and Cutter, which is race after next, 2 races after that, 2 races after that.
Yep. And if you can only have one, I think it's definitely Lando. I think he's still better, and he will get prioritized most likely.
Same question, same guy, different driver. How many races would you sign Sainz for? I'm going probably shorter term on Sainz.
I think William had a really good answer to that earlier.
Yeah, I think the number is 2.
Yeah,
that way,
that's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, that way you don't have him out for a sprint if Ferrari's really there. And it does also give you a chance to assess if Ferrari is still performing on tracks that are not street circuits or Monza, which is special. So I think 2 is the sweet spot.
Okay, I'm going to start skipping some of these if I think we already answered them because we are running out of time. There's a lot of questions still coming in. And I think if you've been listening long enough, you know that there's kind of like 3 drivers that we think are good ads this weekend anyways. Okay.
Yeah, and we have a Discord, and there's a community that's happy to answer the questions there as well. Sometimes we even show up in there.
We do. Sorry, I'm combing through these. Oh, I was one of the unfortunate people to have Both Perez and Sainz at Baku. Ouch.
Oof.
I have 42 in the bank. Perez, Albon, and Williams are locked. Sainz, Norris, and Russell remain.
Okay. Well, we didn't want Perez anyway. So
Well,
good news there.
this person that was a great time to have all of those drivers spin off. I mean, if those all dropped last weekend, Perez was, or sorry, who did he say was locked? Oh yeah, Perez. Okay, never mind. Not on Perez. Albon though, didn't Albon was up 2. Williams was up 2.6. So
yeah, Albon and Williams were good. Perez wasn't.
No bueno. Okay, so how can we get this guy back in the game?
Okay, 49 million, and we need. Well, it's like we need 2 drivers and a constructor.
Yeah.
Yes.
Shout out for having the right read. Sometimes you have the right read on drivers, and it just variance gets you in the end. Those were good drivers to have, and that was a very good lineup. It just
and
racing happens.
So he has 42, but he's got Williams locked, which is, I think.
Yeah, so it's a little bit unfortunate to miss out on that value.
Sainz, Norris, and Russell, though. That's a good. I mean, that's pretty top heavy. So I feel like I definitely. So let's get Colapinto out of the equation. We know that's.
Yeah, we take Colapinto. That's an easy pick. Now we have 41, and
he's got Sainz.
Yeah, you've got Sainz already, so you could go big small. Like you could take like Piastri and then like Sauber or something.
That's what I would do.
Like I said before, like there comes a point where if I have to run Sauber, I have to run Sauber.
Yeah.
And you could do a 1 racer on your expensive drivers, so you could get Norris. You could get you have Norris. Never mind. I was going to say if you're out for Norris for 1 week, you could take another expensive driver on a short contract and then jump back to Norris for Austin and beyond. Like that's a strategy.
And a quick point, I know we've been, for anyone that needs to squeeze in a budget driver, I think we've just been like auto putting in Colapinto, which I do think is the right move. But there's nothing wrong with saying you don't trust Colapinto at a course like Singapore. And if that's you, I would say your next choice is probably Tsunoda for a budget driver.
Yeah.
Yep.
I still think Colapinto's the move, but if you don't trust him at all, or you want to save him for a 5-race contract after this, which I think are both legitimate, Tsunoda's probably your guy.
Yeah, if we're looking sub 10, it's Colapinto, Tsunoda, Bottas would be my pecking order. Yeah. I do trust Bottas slightly more than Tsunoda to keep the car in one piece.
But I don't think there's any ceiling for Bottas.
There's really no
Tsunoda
ceiling.
has a ceiling.
Yeah, Sauber's ceiling is everyone crashes.
Okay. Carter, I'm at 61.6. I have Lando for 2 more, Alonso for 2 more. Locked on Sainz, Hulk, Yuki, and Aston Martin. Need 3 drivers and a constructor. Okay. Lando and Alonso. So Colapinto, constructor, Williams. So that leaves us. Okay, so Sainz is locked, so we can't do Sainz. So what does that leave us with? 61.6 minus, we got -8. So 63. And what is
53?
53, sorry. And what is Williams at? Williams is at 13.5.
Yeah, 13.
So that puts you at 40, right? For 2 drivers? Or 1?
And then I think this is the same guy who said potentially releasing Alonso for Albon, which,
yes,
again, wait till practice, but that's something that I would sign off on. I think that's probably the right move just because Alonso's not talent eligible. And if he does drop back below that, you want to be able to sign him.
Yeah, I don't think Alonso has any further room to grow unless like maybe Perez has a problem this weekend or he's just really, really awful this weekend. Like otherwise, I just don't see Alonso getting any better than 9th. Like he's been best of the rest.
Right. Other than DNFs, like I mean, you could get to 8th maybe, but he's not passing anyone ahead of him on track at least.
J Rune 09 says thinking of picking up Colapinto, but would still need a productive talent driver and a constructor. Thoughts?
Colapinto's
I don't
been
know.
a productive talent driver. So here's the
That's
hack
what I
with
was gonna say.
Colapinto. So
Making
when we put
talent.
him in, his average for improvement points was 19th, and it's grown a little bit with the 2 good finishes. But like he could still take like 30 improvement points if he ends up in the actual championship points again,
Yeah.
which is
even
like
if he
a
ends up
massive
in
number
like,
of points. He was one of the
even if he
best
ends
talent
up in-
choices.
even if he ends up in like 12, 13 category, like he's still gonna have potential for huge points as a talent driver. So I don't think you need to do anything.
Yeah, I think that is a
Um,
productive talent driver as long as he doesn't make any mistakes. Like that's your
Yeah.
risk.
Yep. Let's see. Dustin, Perez, Leclerc, Albon, Lock, Norris, and Colapinto. 1 race left. Thinking Stroll for talent, and I want Sainz for 2 races. I like both of those. So that leaves him with 4 drivers. He didn't mention a constructor, so I'm assuming he has one. So that means we need 1 more. Right? Perez, Leclerc, Albon, locked. He's got Norris and Colapinto. He didn't mention a constructor, so he basically needs 3 drivers. And Stroll and Sainz I like. Where does that put him? He's got 55, so take away, what's Stroll at? 11.
11.
What was the other one? Sainz at 23, right?
Yeah, 23-3.
So that leaves him 21 left. I'd be going, I mean, if you want to spend it all, probably Alonso or Albon if you want a different option for talent driver. It's at the top of talent driver eligibility, but potentially circumstances would be if you have Colapinto but maybe don't want to bet on him as a talent driver, you could grab Albon. Holy smokes, we have 3 minutes left. Let's see if there's anything different in here. Okay, this is good. How upset is Ryan that he can't talk about Logan Sargent? Who said that? Where were you? We were talking about Logan Sargent a whole bunch during the top of the podcast.
He's not going to get as much time as usual, but I will make it a personal guarantee that Logan Sargent's name will be said on every single one of these podcasts. It might just be one off when I'm making fun of Colapinto or making fun of Williams, talking about his Indy contract. But yeah, go back and listen to the show. Thanks for coming. But
he said sorry,
Logan Sargent
I was late today.
Logan Sargent will be mentioned in some capacity on every single show. You have my guarantee.
Hashtag justice for Logan.
All right, one more question. Any of you guys want to choose it? Okay, last one. I have 93. Okay, we're building a full team. 93.3 available. McLaren signed for 1 race. Colapinto signed for 3 more races. Locked, Piastri, Norris, Verstappen, Tsunoda. Thinking of grabbing. Okay, I like this. This is helpful. Russell, Hamilton, Sainz. Not sure for what length. So
where's Leclerc?
Yeah,
I think Leclerc's a must-have for Singapore at least.
Yep.
Agreed.
And I'm also thinking in terms of race length, I would be leaving
I'd probably
myself.
do 2. Like for either Ferrari driver, I do 2 races if I'm signing them today.
Because I definitely want to pick Piastri and Norris back up, assuming.
Yeah. So like maybe I do like 2 for Leclerc, 1 for Sainz, so I can pick up a McLaren driver. Like ideally Norris, since like if the budget will work out to where you'll have the money to pick up, like when you're picking your legs, make sure you can pick up Norris for Austin. That's what I'm saying. So like you're going to sign a 1 race deal and hope nothing silly happens, but I think you need Leclerc in there this week.
Last question of the day, Michael Toaster Boy. I'm ranked number 800 overall. Am I doing okay? I would say you are. Anything in the top, honestly, 3,000 to 4,000 is.
You're in the top 1% there.
Yeah, for sure.
If you ain't first or last.
All right. Thank you guys for joining. Excited for the race this weekend. We look forward to catching up again. Unfortunately, another month out, but looking ahead to the United States Grand Prix.
In the meantime, just a quick plug. In the meantime, we do have NASCAR leagues. And if you're in the US and we have the cash games, like you can play pick'em games and daily fantasy with NASCAR. that can fill your month because
can,
NASCAR doesn't
and,
take any breaks.
If you're a first-time player and you haven't played yet, we will match your first deposit you make on our app up to $100. So if you deposit $100, we will give you an extra $100 to play with. So if that is interesting to you, check it out. The contest or pick screen on our game. If you're in the United States, thank you everybody for joining, and we will see you in 4 weeks' time.